All right, it's late. And, I want to get to my Kings of Leon CD before it's time to put the head on the pillow for the night. So we'll make this quick. Kwity Paye is the selection at number 21 overall. Kevin Bowen here. Emergency edition of Kevin's Corner late, I guess early, now that I look at the clock on a Friday morning. We've got morning radio from 7 to 10 a.m. for those of you really craving something early tomorrow morning. If not, this podcast should suffice. Just got done with Chris Ballard, just got done with Kwity Paye as well, and we'll go over some of those thoughts right here. As far as Paye, in my mock that I posted on 107.5 The Fan earlier this week, I had Sam Cosme with kind of trade back being the ideal scenario in the fine print. I didn't think Kwity Paye would be there at 21 overall. The fact that he was there, him and Greg Newsome were the two guys I mentioned of like, if they're there, I think you got to take them. Last night on Beers with Bowen, I think we had it in the second scenario, Kwity Paye going 21 overall, and that was the highest rated scenario I had of the non-trade back. So I think he's the safest edge rusher in a class that is very, very risk reward at that group. We talked about it last night. If and when the Colts take an edge rusher, we're going to have questions. I think Kwity Paye has the least amount of questions. Some of the notes that I wrote down about Paye kind of throughout the draft process, I said compact frame, violent, and effort. Those were two kind of in all caps. Felt like there was three down ability, and then you're working with his pass rush traits. And I try to kind of drive that home a little bit here in the past few days. I feel like we've fallen in love, and I'm partially to blame for this, of like edge rush, third down guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, Justin Houston was a three down guy for you the last 2 years. Before that, Jabal Sheard was a three down guy for you for several seasons. You would love to find that. And I do think there is an ability with Kwity Paye to provide that. Length is a little bit meh, as a rusher. We're talking kind of wingspan and just where he kind of measures against other DNs. Obviously, the size, 6'2", isn't, a massive defensive end. But I think from a strength and explosive athlete, he's probably the best combination, arguably in the draft, certainly at edge rusher there. So, as we talked about all along, take the edge, rely on the OLine depth. That's clearly, in my opinion, what they should do. We'll see, and we'll get into a little bit of Chris Ballard's comments a little bit later. But that scenario B that we had Paye going 21. We had Dylan Radins going 54. I mean, there were several tackles there. And then Paulson Adebo was the fourth-round pick, the corner. And, again, that was the highest of the non-trade backs there. Let's move on to the Chris Ballard comments. He was adamant this was an extremely easy decision. They had a trade offer on the table from another team. Didn't feel like the value was worth it moving back. And the reason why Chris repeatedly said easy, easy, easy in pulling Kwity Paye's card off the board was this is a guy that brings some unique traits as a rusher and character. And you guys know full well what Chris Ballard thinks about character. The more I dug into Kwity Paye's story, and honestly, there's not much digging. I mean, certainly I think a lot of you, even before tonight, had heard of it. But knowing Chris Ballard's family background, boy, you want to pull out the strings of a GM a little bit more. I mean, this is a ready-made, Hollywood film, not to mention team captain and 3.9 GPA. And I was reading an athletic article where Kwity Paye has like a note card that he wrote down in sixth grade with 6 things on it or 5 things on it that he thinks about kind of on a daily basis, or pretty much how he's living his life. These are the 5 things. Nothing worth having comes easy. Nothing will get in the way of me achieving my dreams. Work hard and take care of my family. God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And remember when you wanted what you currently have. Obviously, for those that didn't see the story, war-torn Liberia, his mother, made it out of there, fled the country, I think late 90s, if I'm not mistaken. They were in a refugee camp in the Republic of Guinea, and him and his older brother came to Rhode Island, I think Paye, if I'm not mistaken. He was less than a year old, I think just like 6 months old. Never met his father, named after his grandfather. I mean, when you talk about two things, I guess, is what Ballard really focused on: the effort that the Colts play defensively, and then the adversity that every NFL prospect encounters. They're not worried about Kwity Paye at all there. Effort was clearly something you see on the tape, and then you look at his life story, and he's just brought up in a different manner than so many draft prospects, certainly. I mean, it's a miracle that A, he's in the United States, B, that he's in the NFL. So I think all of that, again, it's the unique traits. Certainly, his tape stands out, and Chris made that very clear, but you combine that with character, I think that's ultimately what separated him from some other rushers. Chris said there were other rushers around him on the board, on the Colts board, but he fit the Colts best. And I think when I hear that, I hear effort and I hear character. Let's go to Paye's fit next. Again, like I mentioned, to me, it's strength and explosive athlete. The combination of those two things, like that offers you some 3-down ability. You look at the production at Michigan and you are left wanting more. I don't think there's any doubt about that. 11 and a half sacks in 38 games, 23 and a half tackles for loss is a nice number, but still, I mean, you'll find other edge rushers that certainly had more production in college. And I think Louis Riddick hit on this when he was drafted. You can't just rush with effort in the NFL. You do have to take those very raw athletic traits, great testing numbers, and if it's Robert Mathis or Brian Baker or whoever, you've got to tap into that, and you've got to diversify him as a rusher. Honestly, if I'm not mistaken, I bet Kamoko Turi probably had more sacks than Kwity Paye did in the Big Ten. Now, how much of that was scheme? I don't think he was maybe dealt a great hand there. I mean, I know full well, but I watched a good amount of Michigan, and just seeing Paye not necessarily lined up as that edge rusher a whole lot. And, at 270, he's kind of this, not a bowling ball, but I mean, he's a little bit stockier, and it seems like they just kind of threw him into the interior on some rush situations where other guys might be, again, just kind of pinning their ears back off the edge. He mentioned himself, Kwity Paye, not a very expansive talker, at least wasn't tonight. But he, feels like more of a 3-4 outside linebacker was his thought coming into the NFL. Said he was kind of a 4-3 weak side end at Michigan. But I'll go back to what I said earlier. I really feel like there is a 3-down presence here. And while I do think the missing ingredient with this defense is the pop on 3rd down, I really feel like that's more of the missing ingredient. I'll acknowledge that, again, Justin Houston walking out the door has opened up 3-down reps at defensive end. And that's where I think Kwity Paye can come in and give you some day one presence. And right now, I mean, Isaac Rochelle and Al-Qadim Muhammad, and again, Kamoko Turi's not a 3-down guy. Ben Banogu, I like Tyquan Lewis more in the interior as well. I think Kwity Paye can be a day one guy for you on all 3 downs. And I don't know if I would have said that about every other pass rusher, kind of in that first, second round mix. I don't know if fans will love this comparison, but I do feel like there is can he be a better Jabal Sheard, better Eric Walden type? Again, not the exact frame of those two guys, but Sheard, if I'm not mistaken, he was a pretty high second round pick. So, a guy that with strength and explosion can be a presence on the rundowns, and then benefit from the double teams that inevitably come the way of DeForest Buckner. I know the Colts love to rotate guys up front, and I get that, but they've also been searching for that longer-term defensive end of a guy that can be strong at the point of attack, hold up in the run game, things like that. And if you look at Paye's kind of disruption numbers at Michigan, those are pretty strong. Again, the sack numbers, not where you would want it, but the disruption numbers, pretty strong there. Did mention kind of the health scare that Eden Rappaport tweeted about. Basically, Tropin levels. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that 100% right, but Kwity Paye said that he was tested for that. It was initially high, retested, came down much, much lower on that. So just a scare, nothing crazy there. And clearly the Colts felt pretty good with that. I guess before I get into day two thoughts, just again on Paye, I just feel like he was the safest of the edge rush group with the ability to tap into those traits. But this is an unpolished. I mean, this is a still to be polished pass rusher. This is not a ready-made pass rusher. So development is going to be needed for him to be a productive sack guy on third downs. And you know, you guys, heard me mention the stat of the last 5 years. Only 5 rushers in the league have come in as rookies and had at least 9 sacks. 4 of them went in the top 10. So, I'm not expecting him to walk in the door and have 10 sacks or anything. But don't be surprised if there are, 5, 6 sack seasons or, season early on. But they feel like with character, which you fully understand it, that they can get more out of Kwity Paye from that third down ability. And really develop him into a pretty complete defensive end. So when you talk about effort, when you talk about motor, he definitely checks those boxes, and we know how big that is for Matt Eberflus and company. So yeah, Paye was a guy that I liked. He was my favorite edge rusher. I think we talked about that throughout kind of the past few months. I Owe and I had Tryon mocked in the second round, and Phillips to me was a red flag, due to medicals. I just felt like Paye would make me sleep the best at night, and you got to rely on your coaching staff now to try and get a little bit more out of him, knowing full well that given his character, you expect him to, I think, knock down the wall in adversity better than maybe some other failed picks or whatever, yet to materialize picks have not done in the Chris Ballard era, particularly even at his own position. So I think that's where, again, when the Colts felt that trade offer, got the trade offer at 21, the character plus his unique trait, because his testing numbers, I mean, if you look at his strength and his explosive numbers, boy, I mean, it's high 90 percentile, even though he is only 6'2" and 260, which isn't, kind of the ideal frame, or even close to a guy like Jalen Phillips or somebody like that. I feel like that's everything really on Paye. Looking ahead to day two a little bit, obviously the Colts, without trading back, it does stunt your flexibility. There are reasons to stand pat at 21, certainly, but you only have one pick. And, unless you trade back from 54, in all likelihood, you're probably only going to make one pick tomorrow. And then, also you do think a little bit down to 2022 and the ability to really acquire that big-time draft capital for next year to kind of offset what you're losing in the Carson Wentz trade. That came and went tonight. And so I do think we just have to acknowledge that, not trading back, it does limit a little bit of your flexibility. Now, Ballard, again, said it tonight. He's playing a great hand in terms of not committing himself to drafting a left tackle. And really, he's been doing that, I would say, since January. Continues to speak about the OLine depth of this draft class, really, really likes it. But he also acknowledges that the prototypical left tackles aren't necessarily there. We saw Tevin Jenkins fall out around 1. Liam Eichenberg, Brian Kelly says more of a right tackle. Sam Cosme still on the board as well. Dylan Radins. Try to think who else. We have an article up on 107.5 The Fan, so check that out for who's still available on day 2. But besides Leatherwood, that might have been it. I don't know if there was another tackle that went after him, really. I guess Darrisaw went a few picks out for the Colts as well. And again, kind of that lazy trait was the one that worried me there. But, I mean, in my eyes, you got to go left tackle at 54. I know, again, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself, but the Colts have done that with the lack of attention they gave edge rusher in free agency, to where they can go and kind of maneuver and really rely on best player available. But as much as I say that and think that, I hear Chris Ballard talk, and again, maybe this is just straight up smoke screens by him. He doesn't seem as committed to it as I am, or I honestly think many people are. Continues to say roster building, happens all year long, and finding the best 5 and all that stuff. But if you make that pick at 54, mean, you're not picking again until 127 in all likelihood. So that's quite a while to wait. And in no way, shape, or form is a round 4 tackle coming in here and starting day 1 for you. So I think 54 has got to be a left tackle, which is a bit of a bummer because, if the right tight end's there or whatever, the right wideout is there, you would like to see them have that ability. But I think one of those tackles, which, again, some of them are still on the board and there's great depth there, I think that's a route to go tomorrow night, or I guess I should say tonight. So hope you guys enjoy this emergency podcast. Hope I didn't wake up Rosie Bowe or Maddie Bowe. I don't know if I've ever called her Maddie Bowe in my life. That sounds kind of weird. So, again, we got articles up on the website. Posted kind of a 3 takeaways from the pay pick. The best prospects available on day 2. Get more into some Chris Ballard comments when I wake up in the morning. And, stay tuned to 107.5 The Fan all weekend long. We'll have content up on the website. I think this will probably be the only podcast until Monday morning. I don't know. Maybe if they do something crazy tomorrow, I'll come back with one. But in all likelihood, we'll just wait till Monday to recap the entire draft. So everybody enjoy the draft. Have a great weekend. Thanks for everybody that tuned in to Beers with Bowen. And we'll talk to you on Monday.